You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week, Joshua Collier, artistic director of Opera Vermont, goes inside the huddle to share his company's vision for presenting a multi-year cycle of the operas of William Grant Still. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, is classical music criticism dead, or is it just in charge of the obituary section at the New York Times? Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. You can also stream episodes of OBS every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central at amplisoundsradio.com. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. Now, I said Oliver Camacho would be joining us, and he will be for a pre-recorded interview, but he's not here right now, Matt Cummings, and you know what that means?
It means I'm Googling Tennis News 2025
No!
to
Matt,
look
stop!
for updates as fast as I can.
Do you have any sports news for us whatsoever, Matt Cummings?
I mean, with a local flavor, I'm hearing anecdotally that the Cubs are not doing so well in the playoffs, but this is the type of year where if the Cubs are in the playoffs, I avoid that area of town like the plague, so I couldn't really tell you anything else.
I did see a theory, however, that Trump's first term was a few days after the Cubs won the World Series.
Yeah, which I saw a lot of people were like, the blue team from Park Ridge, Illinois, are they going to win? And it's like, no, we didn't.
We'll see if we can bring it all back, realign the space-time continuum. Until then, I'm just going to enjoy not knowing anything about tennis. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
As we announced last week, Opera Vermont, a company about which we knew very little, has announced their plan to mount 7 operatic works by William Grant Still between now and 2031, beginning with A Bayou Legend next month. Since no other company, friend of the show or otherwise, seems to have attempted this feat, we felt an urgency to understand what was behind this idea and how they would pull it off. That brings us to our guest, Opera Vermont's artistic director, Joshua Collier, who is also a working singer. Oliver spoke to Joshua earlier today, who was calling him from Verona. Before we join their conversation, let's listen to the Brindisi from Opera Vermont's production of La Traviata from last spring, featuring soprano Sheila Cristano with the New England Repertory Orchestra conducted by Kaylin Marcel Manson.
Today we're going inside the huddle with Joshua Collier, the artistic director of Opera Vermont, and also a tenor and stage director, phoning in from Verona. Welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here.
So the reason why we're talking today is because last week we amplified the announcement of the William Grant Still cycle that Opera Vermont will be presenting starting in November. But I feel like I had not even heard of Opera Vermont until I saw this press release. So maybe we need to rewind it back a little bit. When I was doing my, just scratching the surface on the history of Opera Vermont, I understand that it used to be called the Barn Opera.
It did, yeah. We, like you said, I'm a tenor. I was in Boston, but I was producing in Boston. And in 2013, I started an opera company championing the works of Benjamin Britten called Opera Britannica. And I was in Boston for a while, but my family and I moved to Vermont because I was traveling and singing too much. I thought I was leaving producing behind, but I went to Vermont, and in the town that I live in currently, which has only 4,000 people, there was a small barn that was renovated into a music hall. And there was a party that was thrown for me, and I went, and I said, "Wow, I would love to do a concert here." I said, "Well, no, I have a lot of friends that are opera people, and we could probably put an opera together in a tiny little town of 4,000 people." And everyone said, "No, it'll never work. It'll never work." But we did. And we sold out every performance. We started with Madame a Butterfly in 2017, and we sold out every performance of every production to the point where locals couldn't get tickets. We had people coming from Montreal, which is about a 2.5 hour drive, and New Jersey. So we needed a bigger space. And so we found a bigger barn and we renovated it. But even still, we had a lot of people that said that they wanted to see our stuff. They read all the reviews. I was noted as one of the 40 people under 40 years old in the state of Vermont, the movers and shakers artistically. There's a lot of reviews nationally for the work that we've been doing, but it's we have a saying in Vermont, you can't get there from here. And so we decided that rather than having people come to the barn, we would change what it meant to be a state opera company. And instead of having people come to the most populous part of the state in order to see opera, we are bringing opera to the state by partnering with existing venues and building operatic productions within those venues such that there is an operatic performance, a live opera performance within 30 minutes of every Vermonter.
Well, so what repertoire do you think I'm sorry to say fledgling company, but your young company is best served, is best serving? And what repertoire do you think the audience in Vermont needs to hear?
I think that's a really difficult question, honestly, because, we've done the masterworks. We've done a lot of the masterworks. We've done a lot of world premieres. We've done new adaptations of masterworks. We've done film. We've done a lot, and our demographic tends to like all of it. So I have a hard time kind of pigeonholing and saying this is the repertoire that we should do for any real reason, because I think that there are artists that we like to promote and like to facilitate that are of different artistic qualities and prefer different mediums. So I would say that anything that is artistically intriguing on my end is something that I think we can do and that we do well. Our artistic team with myself as director and Kaylin Marcel Manson, our music director, I think that we really we've tackled some pretty crazy things, and we've done it with aplomb. So I don't think that is a question that I can answer about what is the best.
Okay, well, but put a pin in that. But before I go back to that, I guess I didn't ask at the start. What are the performing forces that you are working with?
Are you specifically talking about the team at Opera Vermont, or are you?
Yes, exactly. Are you working with chamber ensemble, piano? Do you have an orchestra?
Yeah. So we are working with all of the above. So we have a pianist or many pianists. We have a chamber ensemble, but we also have access to our house orchestra, which is Kaylin's orchestra, the New England Repertory Orchestra, which was founded. I guess it's now been quite a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And it is specifically to promote instrumentalists of color in the region. And so we have a bunch of, young, awesome, hotshot, instrumentalists that come and are a part of Opera Vermont. We have pianists that are established around the country. One is currently in Fort Worth. One is in Boston. We have pianists that are established that play a part with us. And Kaylin is our music director, and I'm the artistic director, and we decide collectively who is a part of each production.
The orchestra, what is the name of the orchestra again?
The New England Repertory Orchestra.
And is the New England Repertory Orchestra limited or self-limited to doing works that fit their mission?
I think that I'm going to say their mission is the promotion of music rather than any type of other demographic mission. But I don't really want to speak to that because I don't know their specific mission or how it would self-limit in any way. What I can tell you is that I know that they play a really awesome Tchaikovsky symphony as well as a new opera.
So getting back to you as artistic director and as stage director, and I assume you also are singing in some of these productions, this is going to sound like a rude question. I promise you it's not meant to be. How do you separate your own artistic proclivities and preferences from the need of the company? A company, that's trying to establish opera in a space that didn't have it.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny because I actually don't think that is a rude question. I think that it's an understandable question. I'm a tenor. The reason why I moved to Vermont was to, my expectation was to be the hermit that no one knew, and that I would just travel around and sing. But unfortunately, I fell in love with the state and decided to continue to produce. My answer to the question is I really don't like to sing with Opera Vermont. It is not my idea of a good time to direct and do all of the work that is required of an artistic director and also sing. Those are two very difficult things, and to do them simultaneously well is difficult. And that's not to say that I haven't. I have jumped in for tenors that have tended to not been up to the task or have other obligations. But I don't like to do that. And in fact, that's why I'm calling you from here. I'm stopping singing in America. I'm really trying to focus on singing in Europe rather than and not produce in Europe, but continue my work as artistic director and be seen as a director in America, and not really so much working on in the singing element in America.
So the reason why we're speaking is because, as I said, we noticed that your company is doing something I don't think anybody's ever tried to do, at least not that I've heard of, which is to mount all of the known William Grant Still, all the ones that have working scores but that have performing editions. I guess, do they even have performing editions? Some of these shows that you're going to do. I mean, let's go back to the idea that it's a William Grant Still opera cycle over the course of 6 years? You went over 8 years. You have 8 years, so 8 operas in starting with this coming year, a Bayou Legend. I had never heard of a Bayou Legend. I know about Highway. What's it called again? Highway 8 or Highway 1? One of these titles maybe rings a bell. These are not operas that are in the canon by any means. Why? Yeah, because erasure.
Well, right, exactly, and this is a real problem. Obviously, it's a real problem. I don't, that's not groundbreaking information. But Kalen and I were talking about this, and in fact, I really do have to give him a lot of credit for this. I knew about William Grant Still, but I didn't really know his work. And so Kalen and I were talking about it, and ultimately we decided to produce this piece. We decided to produce a Bayou Legend. He knew of it. He had sung it years ago, but it really hadn't been done. It was written in 1941 with librettist as his wife, and it was written in 1941, and it wasn't produced until 1974. And it was it was publicized in 1981 on NPR or on public TV, in from Opera South. But it hasn't really gotten a lot of play. Why is that? I don't know. So what started as an inquiry just in producing a piece of art that, unfortunately was not widely distributed, over the past 2 years, I have been talking with Judith Ann Still, who is William Grant Still's daughter and who is the sole owner of William Grant Still Music. And like I said, what started as a business conversation about this has actually turned into a really deep and personal friendship with her. And this conversation didn't start with great friendship. I'll just let you know. It was met with a, why are you interested? You're white. How is it possible that you could be interested in this music? And it over the course of the last 2 years, she has gotten to know me, my heart, my desire to promote and to facilitate underrepresented voices, and to leverage my position of authority and privilege to help with things that I think are important. And even to the point, the question that kind of like the elephant in the room with a lot of people is, you're white, why are you doing this Black composer's music? And I understand the question. And what I would say to that was that I also had reservations. I also am not sure that I am the best messenger for this. But fortunately, I am not doing this by myself. I have a team with Kaylin and with the New England Repertory Orchestra and with a fantastic slate of principal artists, all of color, all established within the field to help me tell this story, or to tell the story that I could just facilitate. But even in discussing my hesitations with Judith, she told me that, well, one, we have to remember, her mom is Verna Arvey. She's a white Russian immigrant Jewish pianist that married her father, William Grant Still. So, she said to me that William Grant Still's music is not Black music. It is American music. And she said, even just in a conversation we had, a few weeks ago, that the love of the music and of wanting to tell this story means that she gives her blessing for me to be a messenger, and not the only messenger, but to welcome it into the canon. And I think that that's what's important for me. And again, not even just as a performance. We are partnering. This is I don't know. I mean, you read our press release, but this is much bigger than a performance. We're with this Bayou Legend. We're also partnering with educational institutions like Clark University and Longy Conservatory in Boston to be able to continue this, to make it so that it becomes part of the canon. These educational institutions are promoting this work as if it were La Boheme. And that normalization is definitely part of the mission. And being able to say that for the next 8 years, or however many years it takes for us, because I don't want to like nail us in for 8 years. We might do 2 in a way, we might do 4. I don't know. But in order to do this and to complete my promise to her, it is important that the generation that is coming through conservatory right now know that this music is just as viable as all of the Western European music.
Okay, so you didn't allow me to ask the question that was on my mind, and I think that you handled that very well. So it feels like I don't want to say that you're defensive about it, but that you're prepared to be asked this question about why you with this music. I will say, as a person of color working in opera, I am very suspicious, and this is nothing personal at all, but there has been a lot of performative inclusivity. But you are dedicating, 8 seasons to this project. A Bayou Legend in November next year, 2026. Costazo in 27, Minette Fontaine.
So let me just with Costanzo, if you think about, so I don't know what if you've read any interviews with Judith Ann Still, she says in every interview that Costanzo's music is her favorite music that her dad ever wrote, and that opera was her dad's life. Not, I mean, I'm sure he loved the other stuff, but she says on multiple occasions that opera was where his heart was. But no one in his time gave him that opportunity to explore it. And I could tell you stories that she told me, but again, that is hearsay, and I don't want to give third-party stories when they're not my stories to tell. But suffice it to say that Costanzo has never been performed. This is a world premiere. When I talked to her, there was only one score printed, and this was last year, and we were talking about it, and she said, Bayou Legends is great, but Costanzo, and I didn't think anything of it, and I got an email from her saying that I should expect a package. And in that package was the score to Costanzo. So this was her suggestion that we do Costanzo in 2026. So, I totally hear the performative, I hear that there are a lot of performative, there's some nonsense that's happening in this country. As far as, me being white, I think that what I would say is this isn't a one-off. If you look at all of our, many of our casts, if you look at our artistic team, from the dawn of Barn Opera, my best friend, who's now our music director and who conducts at Carnegie Hall and is a part of, all of these things, he was sharpless to my Pinkerton, right? We have performed quite a bit over the years. His orchestra is our orchestra, where I understand that there are companies that there is performative action taken. I feel like what I'm trying to do is only facilitate.
Great. I'm not arguing with you about it. I think, trying to understand the landscape of opera in the U.S. and thinking about companies like Opera Creole and Opera Lafayette, who already made ground on resurfacing some of this forgotten work. William Grant Still, I feel, is in his own category. I don't think of him as a Black composer. I think of him as just a composer, But still, Vermont is not necessarily a place where we think, oh yeah, that's like the beacon of diversity,
I totally agree. Absolutely. I think it fights with Maine as the whitest state. But or maybe we go back and forth. I'm not sure. But in fact, that doesn't interest me. I in a conversation that I had with Judith, I was talking and I said, neither of us have political power, and that, but what we both have is artistic control. She has artistic control over releasing or the allowing me or any other company to do this work, and I have artistic control in choosing what works are important to do. And so I think that it's I don't actually care that Vermont is the whitest state, because it doesn't interest me to cater to a demographic. Just like what you said, he is a composer. He's American history, and he is an American composer. And I think that I'm very willing to take the heat if there's anybody who has a problem with that.
So I'll finish the list here. You have Minette Fontaine, which I've never heard of. Troubled Island, which is a tested piece that has been staged. Mota, completely unheard of to me. Yep. The Pillar, and then maybe the most famous of them, Highway 1, which has been which is being produced actually in Chicago very soon. So with these lesser known scores, do parts exist?
They do exist. Parts and scores exist for all of these pieces. I I have seen Costanzo, A Bayou Legend, and I have some parts, not orchestral parts, but some parts of Minette Fontaine. And the story, and I've talked with Judith about the story in this, and it seems like a very cool piece concerning like Marie Laveau.
Well, let me stop you right there, because we're talking about a Bayou Legend. We're going to promote that, and the other operas. We can maybe talk about them in the future.
I would love to do that. So absolutely.
But before we just wrap this up by promoting a Bayou Legend, since Costanzo seems to be like the most important of the things you'll be presenting in the near future, and since it's a world premiere, do you have any of William Grant Still's like notes about how we thought about casting it? And since nobody's ever heard this thing, how can you imagine how to cast these roles?
What I have heard from Judith, it is basically what she says. It is similar to Puccini's Tosca, both in structure and in story, and it is set in the American Southwest. And so I don't know about casting. I think that what William Grant Still would cast would be based on storytelling ability and on vocal quality. He, if you listen to his orchestral, music and also his operatic stuff, you can hear, he was a fantastic orchestrator. So you can hear that he was interested in musical color. And I think that is something that would probably be more important to me than exactly who or any other demographic.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe revisit this when you get closer to actually presenting Costanzo. If you learn something after living with the score for a year. In the remaining 2 minutes or so that we have, can you tell us about A Bayou Legend?
Yeah, A Bayou Legend is a phenomenally beautiful piece. It has, it's Western operatic in structure, but with influences of jazz, and there's comedy and drama and romance and beautiful arias. Extractable things that I have said on many occasions, like, why isn't this in the public domain? Why haven't I, heard this in auditions from singers? I think that some unbelievably beautifully educated, and I'm going to say prescient lyrics from his wife and librettist Verna Arvey, set in an insular community that is very afraid of the other. It is very afraid of anything that goes against religion. And with the story being, there is a townsperson who is in love with his soulmate, who happens to be a spirit in the bayou. And she says to him that they have been in love since the beginning of time and will be in love through the end of time. And that doesn't exactly comport with the linear idea of time from this very Christian insular community. And so obviously it comes to blows at the end with an ending that I'm not going to give away, but is really beautiful and impactful. And it kind of changes how we look at what this action is, and especially if we look at it in the context of where she was writing and where he was writing. In 1941, of them as an interracial couple with children, and dealing with the complexities of that relationship as it relates operatically. So I would highly recommend come hear beautiful music, see beautiful stuff happening at the Chandler Center for the Arts in Randolph, Vermont, which has agreed for 8 years to host this cycle, which is going to be very, very cool. And so it's a long-term investment also on their part. But I would say in November of every year for the next while, make plans to come to Vermont. It's a beautiful state, and you can hear William Grant Still's opera then.
A Bayou Legend launches the projected complete cycle of William Grant Still's operas November 14th and 15th at the Chandler Center for the Arts in Vermont. Joshua Collier, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for helping me get the word out for this amazing cycle and beautiful piece of music.
Our lives were so much more than one November night. I don't get to live my life, but what I lived, I'm grateful for. Because I lived. In this house of love.
Soprano Kathleen Eccles singing Nancy's aria from Opera Vermont's 2024 world premiere of Truman and Nancy by William Zeffiro with New England Repertory Orchestra. Our thanks to Joshua Collier for suffering Oliver's indelicate line of questioning. Find more information about Opera Vermont's William Grant Still opera cycle on the webpage for this episode at operaboxscore.com. Matt Cummings, what opera cycle do you think we should be reviving next? We've already got the Ring cycle. We've got the Still cycle. What's the next one we should be bringing back from the dead? Putting you on the spot immediately.
You are putting me on the spot. Thank God we can edit this out in post while I come up with an answer. I think we should go with the expanded version of the Tudor Queen's operas and throw in Il Castello di Kenilworth and the Mercadante Elizabeth opera too. Let more Italian versions of English queens being nasty to each other.
That's always a good time, operatically speaking. I would love for someone to attempt to put on the Harry Lawrence Freeman tetralogy, Zululand, because as far as I know, it's never been recorded even in part. And I am on the record saying that Harry Lawrence Freeman is one of those composers that we desperately need at least some reference recordings for, because he was such a force in black music in the sort of turn of the previous century. I'm really excited for, this Still cycle as well. And I really love when you get an opera company that isn't necessarily the biggest name in the world really putting something out there and doing something creatively risky, I guess. I mean, not that William Grant Still is a fringe composer at all, but but
like anything that isn't Bohème and Carmen is risky at this point in time.
Legitimately, I love it so much. If you're in Vermont, you really should go check all of these out and let me know how they are. And, Opera Vermont, if you're feeling generous, throw me a couple $100 and I'll get a plane ticket and go to Vermont. I don't usually have a reason to do that.
If you're feeling generous, I think that maybe you should throw a couple $100,000 at Opera Vermont so that they can do their own Auslicht.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Find a friend if they're into opera at all. Drag them kicking and screaming to a pair of headphones and make them subscribe as well. The 2-minute drill is right now.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Last month, Zachary Wolfe officially became the obituaries editor at the New York Times after being removed as the paper's classical music critic earlier this year. Last month, Jesse Green, former head theater critic, was appointed cultural correspondent for the Times, a position which will include classical music reporting and criticism. As of the time of recording, the positions for full-time classical music critic, pop music critic, and television critic are still listed as available on the paper's website.
Bass Pata Borhuladze was arrested by the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Georgia, the country, following a political protest in Tbilisi. Berukhalze has become a prominent political figure in Georgia and was a member of the October 4th protest organizing committee opposing the interim government. He has been charged with, quote, calling for the violent overthrow of Georgia's constitutional order and participating in group violence. Fellow Georgian Anita Rashvelishvili expressed support for the singer, saying, quote, he is fighting for our country. We love you, maestro, and we are all with you.
The South Bank Center in the United Kingdom is partnering with TikTok to launch Crescendo, a new initiative to raise the platform of digital classical music creators, as the classical music hashtag on TikTok has seen a 60% increase in use over the last year. Quote, bridging the worlds of classical music and digital storytelling has shown me how powerful platforms like TikTok can be in connecting new audiences with the art form, said Crescendo panelist and violinist Esther Abrami. Crescendo is an opportunity to give artists, creators, and musicians greater access to the arts.
20-year-old opera singer in training, Megan Hastings, says she got into opera in part because of a reduction of symptoms in her Tourette's syndrome. Discovering singing has offered relief from painful tics she has experienced for the past 10 years. Quote, when I'm singing, you wouldn't think I had it, said Hastings. It's freeing to be able to sing through songs and being in rehearsals, being comfortable and not in pain all the time.
Last season, the Turkish State Opera and Ballet drew record crowds for the second year in a row, reflecting the company's commitment to putting on festivals in underserved parts of the country, rather than limiting itself to large urban areas. Opera and ballet have achieved great milestones, said General and Artistic Director Tan Sayturk. The more we collaborate with local talents, introduce them to conservatories, and share our art with them, even in earthquake-affected regions, the public will see that our work is more than just entertainment.
The label and classical music specialist organization Naxos has been bought out by Cuke Music Holdings Limited for a controlling share of 70.43%. The $106 million purchase is despite a lawsuit 1 year ago that alleged that Cuke actually owed Naxos $1.8 million in unpaid fees. Quote, this strategic acquisition will significantly enhance our position as a leading classical music services platform, said Cuke chairman and CEO Pei Shan-tan. Naxos' world-class content library, combined with its proven global distribution capabilities, creates compelling synergies with our existing music education and technology platforms.
If you're in New York City and a fan of Giuseppe Verdi, and why wouldn't you be, I have some great news for you. Participants at a public celebration on Broadway and 73rd Street on October 10th, mark your calendars, will be invited to sing Va Pensiero, the chorus of the Hebrew slaves, in front of 27 red roses, which will be placed in honor of Verdi's 26 operas and the Requiem.
Finalists have been announced for the 2025 Gramophone Awards, which include multiple friends of the show. Amanda Forsyth, for her album of Telemann arias, is going up against the debut solo album of Oliver's Parallel Universe husband, Hugh Montague Rendell. The third nominee in that category is Lucretia, Portraits of a Woman, featuring Sandrine Piau, Lucille Richardot, and other not-yet friends of the show. In the opera category, The Flying Dutchman, featuring Gerald Finley and another friend of the show, Lisa Davidson, is competing with Opera Rara's original 1857 version of Simone Boccanegra, and Michael Tippett's, only in England, New Year. In the song category, friend of the show, Julien Pregardien's Schöne Malerin vies for the prize against tenors Nikki Spence in Foray songs and Robin Trichler in Songs for Peter Pears. May the best friend of the show win.
And one more major award. Avant-garde composer and performer Meredith Monk will receive the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement at the Venice Biennale Musica.
In trade news, Garsington Opera has announced that Ben Weston, no relation, will be the company's new executive director starting this November. Weston, again no relation, will take over from Nikki Creed, who has served in the position since 2013. Farther east, Polish Royal Opera has appointed conductor Marta Kluczynska to the position of deputy general manager. Finally, in the USA, New Rochelle Opera has appointed Jason Tram, once again no relation, comedy comes in threes, as its new general and artistic director.
On the disabled list, Julia Bullock has withdrawn from Magic Flute at the Royal Ballet and Opera following recurring symptoms for an undiagnosed condition. I've made the decision to go back home and try to get to the root cause of the problem, said the soprano on Instagram. Lucy Crowe will fill in for the role of Pamina.
And on this day, October 6th, in 1600, it was the first performance of Jacopo Peri's opera Eurydice in Florence, Italy. In 1722, Johann Fuchs's Le Nozze di Aurora, not to be confused with that other Nozze, had its premiere in Vienna. 1851 saw the first performance of Francisco Barbieri's zarzuela Jugar con Fuego in Madrid. In 1853 was the first performance of Adolphe Adam's Les Bijoux Perdus in Paris. In 1868, Offenbach had a premiere, his La Pericole in Paris. In 1892, Alberto Franchetti's Cristoforo Colombo in Genoa. And in 1996, there was the first performance of Zemlinsky's opera Der König Kandaules, which was a posthumous performance at the Staatsoper in Hamburg.
Some birthdays today as well. In 1820, it was the birth of Swedish soprano Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale, who was not a beltress for Hugh Jackman, but we do what we can do. Italian tenor Giuseppe Anselmi was born in Catania in 1876. Polish composer Karol Szymanowski was born in 1882 in Ukraine. And in 1887, it was the birth of Moravian-born American soprano Maria Yaritza in Brno, which at that time was part of the Austrian Empire.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
That was a little bit of Maria Yaritza performing Es gibt ein Reich from Ariadne auf Naxos. You may have noticed that the recording quality on that one was maybe not up to our usual standards, but we had to go with this clip because how often do you get a chance to play a clip of the originatrix of a role like that on the show? That's right, she was the very first prima donna Ariadne in 1911 when that opera premiered.
What a wild flex to be like, yeah, I was cast as the prima donna in the prima donna role. You know what I mean? By Strauss, no less.
He knew his way around a soprano.
That is for sure. And, you know, it's someone else who presumably knows his way around sopranos, and indeed a lot of classical music, is Zachary Wolfe. And unfortunately, his career is, I won't say dead, but certainly the obituary section feels mean.
It honestly feels like HR was like, how can we get him to resign? We're just speculating here. We have no insight into the staffing decisions of the New York Times. But Zachary Wolfe still is a critic who knows his way around opera,
yes.
and writes very, very well about the voice. And I'm still disappointed that we won't get to read his work in that section anymore. Yeah, I mean, hopefully this is not the end of his musical criticism career, and that we will get to continue to read more reviews and write-ups that are not just about famous opera singers as they pass away. But what do you think this means for music criticism, not just at the Times, but like in the U.S.?
I mean, it is a big question. I think that, we talked about this a little bit once we heard that Zachary Wolfe was getting, moved. And at the time, they were promising that they would be hiring someone else in his position. And indeed, as of our recording date right now, that does seem to still be up, that they are searching for a classical music critic, and, all the other, the what was the pop music critic, the TV critic, they're all still open. So theoretically they could still hire them, but it's been a little while.
And Jesse Green is also a great writer. Like I really enjoyed reading his theater criticism, but the priorities of theater and even musical theater versus opera in terms of like what the audience is looking for and what is what's most important to talk about is just very different. And I think a great example of that has been the mixed record of theater directors at the Met. Some of them have done very well, and some of them seem to fundamentally misunderstand the art form. And I'm not saying that Jesse Green is necessarily going to fall into the latter category, but it does require a lot of expertise that you wouldn't necessarily have if if your background is writing in theater.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, like, I imagine they'll be pulling in some freelancers. They might even pull in Zachary Wolfe to write things on a more part-time basis. I mean, increasingly, ever since the death of print media circa, 2005 at this point, there was...
The rise of Facebook, those lines.
Exactly. There are fewer and fewer people who are paid to do just one thing. I used to be a journalist myself, and I was... I came to it in the 2010s, and it was already in the midst of that, where there was not a single person who was just doing stories in one sort of specific area, even in fairly large papers. The New York Times is very much sort of the last holdout, at least in the U.S., at least when
there's just so much art going on in New York that merits being written up.
Absolutely. And I think that, it was really the only paper that could really sustain someone like a Zachary Wolfe. You can make some arguments for some of the other large papers and organizations, but it truly was kind of the last one that people would kind of refer to. And it feels like, we might be heading in the direction of quietly dropping the classical music criticism, quietly dropping the pop music criticism and the TV criticism, et cetera, in favor of a more general sort of vibes-based, cultural commentary, which, has its place, certainly. And I think that one problem with a lot of like historic classical music criticism is that it does get very, very technical sometimes in the hands of certain critics.
Either very technical or very like flowery and nondescript. Those are kind of the two main pathways, which again, Zachary Wolfe very rarely went down either one of them, which is why it's so disappointing to see that he's been taken off of this beat full time.
Yeah, he walked that line very well. And I think that was certainly something that was incredibly valuable, where I do think he didn't feel the need to speak down to people in his writing, which I think can be a problem with a lot of classical music critics, but at the same time wasn't just saying, this concert made me feel good. I think that there's something really important that's being lost if he is not replaced by someone who is good. And I really do feel for him, because unless he, like, for some reason really was his dream to do the obituaries, I can't imagine that this would feel like a great move in any particular direction. And, I think it might just go to show you that maybe the future is not in legacy media like the New York Times.
No, because we're looking for Zachary Wolfe's TikTok channel. Now that I would watch.
Honestly, he probably should make one at this point. He might have something in his contract that says he can't, but, he really should. TikTok is the way to go, and that's certainly what the UK thinks, or at least the South Bank Centre in the UK. This partnership is essentially reaching out to classical music influencers who are already, I don't know if they're looking for a certain level of prominence or like ones that they feel like have potential to become really big, but they're investing them. They're creating this sort of, this platform, Crescendo, to, I think, have some sort of live performance concept and put some money behind them. It's a little unclear exactly what they want to do with this long term.
Yeah, whether this is going to be, are they going to be creating new content, or is this just more of a curation, which is definitely something I've enjoyed on classical music TikTok. It's just like clips that I never knew existed because they weren't on the same YouTube searches that I have been checking out for years and years. Like, are there any new videos of Shirley Verrett out there? But there have been on TikTok.
I literally just saw
seen.
One literally earlier today, Matt. I saw it. I'm like, wow, Matt would love this.
Was it of her singing the Alleluia?
Yes, it was.
From Exultate Jubilate? I did see that. I did love it. It's because you're in my phone book. It's like you want everything that Weston has seen.
I think that the cool thing about TikTok in comparison with, if we're going to talk about the New York Times in this conversation, the TikTok algorithm is legitimately a force that is unlike anything else on social media. Mm-hmm. I have seen classical music specifically, not just music, but like performances and even TikTok sounds that are used as background music blow up beyond any sort of reasonable proportion that you might have expected from, even a YouTube or a Twitter or a Facebook, whatever it might have been back then. There's something about the algorithm that does such a good job of really amplifying a lot of stuff on a fairly consistent basis that I think really is a golden opportunity for a lot of classical musicians as well as classical music organizations to take advantage of. I think, unlike the New York Times, you don't have that established user base. You'll get a lot of comments from people who have never heard an opera singer before, for example. I might have quoted it actually on this show. I can't remember. But one quote I'll see a lot in the comments of a TikTok is like, wow, I don't usually like opera, but this is amazing. And it's like, well, once you see that comment enough, you're like, I think you might actually like opera.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And certainly the New York Times and legacy media can offer that kind of context that perhaps a single TikTok video can't. But what we are hurting for is new eyeballs and earphones, connecting to these things. And if you are not taking advantage, if you are a classical music organization and you're not taking advantage of TikTok, you're not taking advantage of social media, you are already so behind on a massive opportunity to turn things around.
It's true. And TikTok and its algorithm is new in some ways, but I do think that it has a lot of similar pitfalls to other social media in particular, but also just media in general, which is that the algorithm, it gives, but it also takes away, because it doesn't necessarily have to be even a day before other things start blowing up. And then when everything is just kind of served to you in a scroll, instead of you actually looking for it and registering it and processing it, like you would if you were sitting down to read a review in the New York Times, it doesn't really stick in your brain that long. I'll hear songs on the radio and I'm like, why have I heard this before? Oh, it was a trending sound on TikTok. Was it a week ago? Was that a month ago? Who sang it? What was that? I have no idea. Is this even real? Or I thought that this was just a real person, but it turns out that they were lip syncing. That lack of transparency, is not necessarily a benefit to all of the artists and creators. Since there's a whole set of incentives that we really don't know what they are and what they're trying to do. So I would be cautious about putting too many eggs into this basket.
The beauty of it, though, is that, you don't have to put in too much effort to, at least be noticed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, I think that if you're trying to reach a younger generation, you are fighting so much lack of knowledge and even what I would call cultural bias against opera. Mm-hmm. There's so many people who have not only never heard an opera, they've only heard about an opera in the context of it being negative in some way. And sometimes all you need is an opera singer who kind of looks like a normal person, doing a crazy run from Donizetti that makes you go, whoa, maybe this is something. And occasionally it will bestow genuine fame upon a random musician. I think probably the biggest classical music influencer that I've come across is probably Anna Lapwood, the random organist that TikTok decided was going to be the most famous classical musician maybe in the world all of a sudden. And now she's getting concerts everywhere. She's collaborating with all these big bands and, is headlining the proms, and, she's just an organist. Like I know, I have friends of friends who know her, who was just a random organist who one day the algorithm decided to choose her. And, there is something to that as well.
Classical music, as always, figuring out the trends 20 years after everyone else.
Truly.
But we'll just put this out there also, that one of the big benefits over discovering classical music through TikTok is that it is an audio-visual platform.
Yeah.
So you can have the commentary about the content, about the music, as well as the music itself in the same place. And you don't have to put down your book or your print copy of the New York Times to go on to Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube and try to find a clip and not know what you're looking for, and just like, it removes some of those barriers to entry to get the actual music in front of people. So in that way, like, let's hope it's successful. But I think we've learned before, I've definitely observed before, that a lot of times the technology is not necessarily going to save us. And even though things can be a great opportunity, a lot of times the consequences play out differently. Like, you might owe someone a lot of money and then end up
getting bought by them a year later.
Yeah.
That was bizarre. So what is the Kuke music group? Kuke. I'm not sure if we're pronouncing it correctly. It could be Kooky music.
I prefer to think of it as a cucumber.
They are a China-based, I believe, classical music company. They might be just include classical music under their umbrella. They have control of several million clips, and there have been a lot of overtures over the last few years. Famously, the only country in the world where classical music is growing at any sort of really identifiable rate is in China. So a lot of investment is coming from China, and a lot of them are reaching out to the sort of, once again, sort of legacy labels and musical organizations to basically get their hands on distribution rights and catalogs, and, and find ways to like bring that over across the seas for this sort of cultural exchange, which, can be kind of a good thing. I mean, despite those strange, lawsuit we were talking about where Kuke wasn't paying up what they were owed to Naxos, allegedly, when its shares were sold to Kuke, the market valuation of Naxos went up by a huge margin. And certainly it'll be a fairly large cash infusion potentially for them. And, as long as, the synergies don't align against Naxos, it could be a very good thing for them financially. Although, once again, it makes me so nervous when a for-profit company, does something major with a classical music organization, because I'm always like, I sure hope no one tells them that classical music doesn't make money.
Like, I sure hope that they're not just buying all of this material to plug into their AI generator to wipe out composers. That's my newest fear for anything technological these days.
Yeah.
And like, what are they, what's going to come of the plagiarism machine?
We're rooting for Naxos. We're rooting for you, Kuke. Don't mess this up. Hopefully this is a good thing.
And we're also rooting, just like Anita Rachvelishvili, for Potabuchalaja,
who is being hospitalized potentially. I think we found
there were conflicting reports, but it seems like he may have been originally left the protests with an oxygen mask on and went to the hospital claiming that vowing to return to the protests later. But it seems like the Ministry of Interior has other plans. And these protests in Georgia are regarding the ongoing political crisis. We're coming up on a year since the Georgia parliamentary elections, with significant irregularities and allegations of voter fraud. And Buttigieg is on the side who is demanding new elections and to get this illegitimate, in their opinion, and seemingly evidence. I'm hardly an international affairs expert in this, but it does not really seem above board, I would say.
If you are a Georgian who knows more than Matt or I, don't get too mad at us, but let us know, listener mailbag, If you're from Georgia, the state, I mean, you can send us a message, but I don't think we'll listen to your opinion about the politics of Georgia, the country. Let's wrap the show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end the show. Eeny, meeny, miny. Ooh, Oliver Camacho actually left us a note. Oliver says, listen to my interview with friend of the show, Andrea Scholl, on WFMT this Saturday at 4 p.m. Central. Oh, I will, Oliver. Thank you for that lovely note. Matt Cummings.
I mean, will Andrea Scholl be performing with accompaniment by Andrew Lloyd Webber? Because if not, he is going to be half a step behind Rachel Zegler. I don't know if I don't know how many of our listeners are also on that nexus of opera and musical theater, like Ashley and I so often are. But on my Twitter feed, I refuse to call it X, Twitter feed earlier this week, I saw lots of clips of Rachel Zegler's performance at the London Palladium, including a bizarre video where Andrew Lloyd Webber came up onto the stage with her and goes, I never do this, but I'm going to accompany you in your next song, which turned out to be Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again. And it really seems like he's trying to Phantom of the Opera her and turn her into his literal next Christine Daae, perhaps for the immersive Phantom in New York, which he's reportedly a big fan of. Who can say? Anyway, any clip that you hear from her is so unbelievably good. She's an incredible singer. I can't wait for higher quality recordings to be available.
Matt, I never do this, but it's time to end the show. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera in the obituary section of your favorite national newspaper. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more corporate buyouts. Join us.